You're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
Follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes.
And download every episode and more at basicallyasportshow.com.
Now here's your hosts, Zach,
Greg,
Mike.
And you're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
Los Angeles Rams is probably going to be a thing that happens.
No, Mike, no. Look, now I understand that Kroenke has bought land to build a stadium in Los Angeles, okay? And he's all but ignoring St. Louis at this point. But you know what?
Not answering their phone calls.
That doesn't necessarily mean that the Rams won't be in St. Louis next year.
Because Stan Kroenke is going to sell the Rams and buy the Raiders.
Because that makes sense.
Is that really?
That's conspiracy theory.
That's the latest
kidding.
Out of St. Louis to try to.
You got to be kidding me.
No.
Oh my God.
No.
Wow. You're right.
I mean,
he's the guy on the Titanic that's like, everything's fine.
But like we've talked about this before. But as we've alluded to, Kroenke has now said, no, that land I bought in L.A. that's totally for a stadium.
Yeah. At first it was like, well, maybe he's going to build a shopping mall. He's like, no, guys, it's a stadium. What if the NFL says no? Well, I'm still going to build it.
Yeah. My favorite part about the story is about apparently how he's going rogue.
Well, yeah, I mean, technically the league needs to approve any move, but the Raiders proved that that's not the case.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if you move, you're excluded from certain provisions, but none of those things really affect him. Really, the only one that would be a bummer for anybody out here is that if he went rogue and just went on his own, we wouldn't be able to host a Super Bowl. But I also have to think that the NFL intentionally snubbing LA from Super Bowls would be one of the dumbest things they've ever done.
Well, not only that, but does anybody in their right mind really believe that the NFL is going to say no to a team in Los Angeles?
The only ones that might veto against it are the Chargers and maybe the Raiders. I can't think of anybody else that would say no.
Well, first off, even if they had enough votes to turn it down, the NFL officers are still going to really campaign to get it done. I mean, there's just no way this doesn't happen now.
I'm really excited about this, guys.
I would be too.
When this thing first came up, I didn't want to post a bunch of stuff about it because I know this is like a for sure almost thing, but it's still like, well, but what if it isn't?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's still the little part of the back of my brain that says, oh, yeah, I know he plans to build the stadium and he owns the team and now he's being a dick to St. Louis, but there's still the little nagging in the back of my head that says, mate, what if this doesn't happen?
Well, sure, there's always a chance that it won't.
At this point, it seems pretty clear-cut. Guy owns the team.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Isn't listening to the proposals in the city it's currently in. He's not even entertaining it. And it's interesting to note that the talk from St. Louis has shifted in narrative from we're going to keep the Rams to we're going to keep the NFL, which means that they've, in my opinion, it seems like they've already given up, and they're all like, okay, the Rams are going to leave, but we can still try to keep the NFL in general around.
If let's just say for a second, let's go down that rabbit hole for a second. Would they be the first city to ever have 3 different franchises? Obviously the Cardinals, then the Rams, and I guess if you're going to move somebody, say the Jaguars?
Greg?
What?
Cleveland. Rams, Browns 1, and Browns 2. 3 teams. Technically,
yeah.
Wait, was Baltimore only 2?
Yeah, the Colts and the Ravens.
They didn't have anybody else.
Not that I'm aware of.
They didn't have the Baltimore Stallions of the Canadian League.
Yeah, but I'm talking like an NFL city. Like St. Louis would have had the Cards, the Rams, and now like the Jaguars, I guess.
I'm really kind of tired of reading all this Pollyanna crap coming out of St. Louis. Like it just bugs me to no end. It's like just you're dead.
The interesting thing from the St. Louis side is that now a few St. Louis partisans are eyeing the Raiders. And I find that hilarious because this has been a discussion on the boards. Imagine if the Raiders moved to St. Louis and you had Cardinals Nation meeting Raiders Nation.
It's the Raider way.
You know what? I almost want to see it happen just for that.
He's classy enough to be a Raider?
That's pretty much anyone, right?
Yeah, is anyone not classy enough to be a Raider?
He's undignified enough to be a Raider.
I mean,
he's classless enough to be a Raider.
So Zach, if the Rams come to L.A., do you switch your team allegiances, or what do you do?
I think it'd be hard for me to completely give up the Colts, considering all the time and effort I put into them. But no doubt the L.A. Rams would be my number one football team if it were to happen. Like, and for anyone that could ever come along and say, well, now you're jumping ship on the Colts, like, no. I've stated this the entire time. The only reason I root for the Colts is because we don't have a team. If L.A. gets a football team that's not the Raiders or Chargers, I will root for said football team.
Oh, what's wrong with the Chargers? Come on now.
I tried with the Chargers. It just never happened for them. If I already gave up on the Chargers in the first place, I'm not going to say, well, now they're an L.A. team. I'll give them another shot. I would never be able to do it. The Colts have had so many run-ins with the Chargers over the years. I've lost any sort of admiration I had for that team. The Rams, they're in a different conference. It doesn't matter.
If they go back to the blue and whites, they'll be my second favorite team right out of the gate. Even if they're just alternates, which is the talk right now. But yeah,
are you already dropping the Browns?
Yeah, I've dropped the Browns, dude. I'm done.
You know what? Screw them.
I am. I'm serious. I just had it.
What if? Okay, well now that we're on this. You're anticipating the uniforms being terrible,
right?
And that's why you're going to be done with it, right?
Well,
there's more to it than that. But yeah, that's like the last straw.
What if the uniforms aren't terrible?
Let's be honest, they're going to be terrible. I mean, look, I'm just basing everything off of what we've seen.
Okay, I know. But what if they aren't?
I don't think it makes a difference at this point.
Really?
Yeah, it's the Packers thing started. Well, it started when I was a kid, like when I was 6 over at my grandpa's house, watching them on color TV back in the day, and
presented in Technicolor, the National Football League.
They had the green and gold uniforms, and I was a uniform dork from way back, but. I've said it a gazillion times on here. They've never been the real Browns to me, and it's just that this year, it's just another. The whole thing with the ineptitude and just now the uniforms. It's like, you know what? I just can't do it anymore. I'm a Packers fan first and foremost, so there's no point in even trying to pretend I'm splitting my allegiances between the two anymore. That's that. So that's basically what it came down to. Yeah, the uniforms played a role, but they could have changed their minds. I don't know if it made any difference. I still think I would have just said, you know what, I'm done. Mm-hmm. There's no reason for me to waste any more time and effort on this. I'm not getting any younger here.
So you've officially retired from the factory of sadness.
I'm officially, I've quit. I've moved on. I got a job at a different factory. I'm working at some cheese place now.
So Rodgers here, he's going to go for the pack on Sunday. So, we got to make all the cheese.
Is it going to be brutal cold out for that game?
Oh, God. Have you seen the pictures of the field this week?
No.
It's just caked in snow.
Oh, God.
Now, yeah. I want
Tony Romo's back is going to freeze up.
I want to discuss the miscarriage of justice that occurred.
Oh, in the Lions-Cowboys game?
Yes.
You mean the NFL basically admitting, yeah, sorry, Lions, you should have won that football game?
Yes.
I don't understand why they even bother doing that at this point. Because what good does it do if you're a Lions fan? We say, oh, well, good, we should have been playing this weekend, and that's all. That'll do for me.
We're not, but we could have been.
Yeah, well, the NFL admitted they were wrong, and you know what? I forgive them. It's okay. No, you're pissed. It doesn't change the fact that the Lions aren't playing this week and the Cowboys are in Lambeau. And not that the Lions would really – I don't think the Lions would have beaten the Seahawks necessarily, but –
I don't know.
They would have had a shot,
right? Yeah,
Carolina.
But we've all seen the play. I mean, there was only about 8 penalties that could have been called, and none were.
Well, but it wasn't even just that one. There's obviously the one, the pass interference that was called
and then taken away.
There's Des Bryant running onto the field with his helmet, yelling at the referee, and then the other one was on the 4th and 6, the great Jason Witten play.
Right.
Yes.
They said, well, there should have been holding on that play. So that would have put who's to say that the Cowboys don't convert a 4th and 16, but 4th and 6 is a lot easier than 4th and 16.
Sure. I don't know. I do, like I said it on the boards, I'll say it here. I don't think the games are literally fixed, but I of all the years I've watched football, and I've seen this happen so many times, you just will never convince me that certain teams get calls that other teams don't.
I agree.
And if you're right. What's the point in saying, hey, we were wrong? That doesn't. I mean, now if I'm a Lions fan, I'm even more pissed at this point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. It's like, okay, well, it's good to see the NFL acknowledges that they got it wrong. Fine. That's good. That's good that they did that. It doesn't do anything for anybody at this point, but I guess it's nice to know.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that you're not crazy. Like, there's probably a bunch of Lions fans saying, "No, come on, that's pass. He called it. I'm not nuts, right? That's a penalty." And the NFL's like, no, you're right. It was a penalty.
Yeah.
You can't do anything. They can't, like, go back and replay it in the middle of the week or anything. The NFL couldn't say, well, you know what? Lions, you go to Lambeau this week instead of the Cowboys.
Or they could just do what Alabama's going to do and just show up anyway.
Just show up. All right, we're ready for the national championship. You're not playing. No. We're the number one team in the country.
Well, Mike, you brought it up. What do you think?
Me?
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't seen officials throw a game so hard for one team to this extent since Super Bowl 40. I mean, that was blatant. You make the call, and then you pick it up after Des Bryant complains. It was as close to a fix as I think we're ever going to see in the NFL.
Do you think that's actually a fix or just bad officiating?
I think.
Like, do you think that they did that they picked it up on purpose?
Well,
or that it was just an issue of the referees being dumb?
There were enough other blown calls that went in the or bad calls that went in the Cowboys' favor later in that game that made me think that there was something going on. Okay, yes, I had basically a paranormal show, and we're going to do more of those. So I don't want to say conspiracy theories are completely outside of my wheelhouse, but when it comes to sports, I am not someone who's going to go, oh, a call went against a team I was rooting for, therefore the whole thing is fixed. I don't do that. But it just seemed to me, to be so obvious. There was another pass interference call that called against the Lions I thought was pretty sketchy later on. There were a couple of no calls that were blatant holds against the Lions' defensive line. There was a bullshit holding call on, I think, the Lions' defensive line at one point. But there were a couple of moments where I thought the Lions were on the receiving end of some pretty bad calls, and it didn't seem like it was even throughout the game. It's not like it was just bad for both sides. It seemed like the officiating skewed in the Cowboys' favor.
Another thing you got to think about, too, with this is that there are a lot of people who see it as, like we just talked about, not necessarily fixed, but officials kind of going out of their way to give one team an advantage over another. Mm-hmm. It's not like we're out here in the woods all by ourselves saying this stuff. And when that many people think like that, you got to wonder if there's not a little smoke there. I mean, I don't know how much of an influence the officiating can really – I mean, I suppose it can have a huge influence, but they give you opportunities. It's up to you whether you cash in on them or not. So that's what they say. Well, a lot of people are like, well, if they fix all the games for the Cowboys, why haven't they won 5 straight Super Bowls? Well, because it's not that simple. They're giving them a chance. You've still got to be able to make it work, and the Cowboys did that. I think that's the difference.
And you know what, Cowboys fans – stop taking it personally. People aren't insulting you personally when they say that your favorite football team got some help from the officials. Hey. Any objective person is coming down saying that they had help from the officials. Admitting, yeah, they got lucky and got some help from the officials. It doesn't mean you're less of a person. So just calm the fuck down. The Maple Leafs fired Randy Carlyle.
And it's Phil Kessel's fault.
Oh, Philly Kessel.
Phil Kessel's amazing. I'm still not over a month or two ago. He's like, you guys don't have to talk to me every day to the media. Phil, you're one of the stars on like the most popular hockey team in the world. You're going to have to talk to the media.
Probably, yeah. I could.
Fat public masturbator.
I want that picture, that Team USA publicity shot of him to be like the file photo they use anytime any news outlet mentions Phil Kessel.
Yeah,
Phil Kessel. You look pretty today.
I was just reading.
You see my hat trick?
How does a guy that plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs of all teams, and he's one of the star players, how does he really think he's going to avoid media scrutiny? That's not even possible.
He's like the white, awkward Marshawn Lynch.
With the specific incident with the Phil Kessel thing, the guy who asked him the question that he reacted to, he's a columnist for the Toronto Star. I forget his name. But anyway, I guess this guy has badgered Phil Kessel ever since he got to Toronto. Like, always calling for him to be traded and, just getting on his throat all the time. So when the guy asked him, so is it your fault, Phil? And he's like, you think this is my fault? He's reacting specifically to that reporter. I'm sure if somebody else asked him the question, he would have been.
Oh, so the writer basically
annoyed.
Insinuated that it was Phil Kessel's fault, that Phil Kessel was behind Randy Carlyle being fired then.
Right. Well, and then the day afterwards, Ron Wilson, who he doesn't have an axe to grind. He was only fired by the Maple Leafs and replaced for Randy Carlyle. He, made some accusations against Phil Kessel, saying that he's kind of lazy and that he kind of plays when he wants to, and that he's streaky. Which kind of represents any high scoring winger is streaky. Corey Perry is streaky. Alex Ovechkin is streaky. Patrick Kane is streaky. So is Phil Kessel. He just happens to be fat.
Oh,
poor Phil.
So he's apparently, from all reports, he's not a guy that he's not the first guy in the gym, last guy out. He's just he's an
athletic fat, but he's fat.
Well, here's the main question is, okay, do you guys, and Mike especially you, do you believe that Phil Kessel is playing as well as he can? Do you feel like he dogs it or anything like that, or is he doing the job adequately in your eyes?
I think he's doing as good a job as possible. I think he's got some mental issues, not to say he's mentally challenged or anything, but I think he's one of those athletes who has a mental block.
So we're talking to Mike here from London, Ontario. He thinks Phil Kessel is retarded. What do you think?
Please talk.
Out there. So, Mike, you think that Phil was dropped on his head as a child and that the Maple Leafs did him as a Make-A-Wish Foundation thing?
I think that makes the most sense. Because,
it'd be downright polite to do that.
I think it makes the most sense given what we've seen so far.
Well, I think what Phil Kessel's problem is that he's being asked to do things by the Maple Leafs that he can't. Mm-hmm. He's not. He's a very skilled and talented player, but he's not the guy that can lead you.
No, he's not the franchise centerpiece kind of guy. He's the guy who complements.
Somebody used the example today that he is the northern Ovechkin. In that Ovechkin, he's a generational type talent. He can score all he wants, but Ovechkin can't win every game by himself. And Phil Kessel doesn't have that. They've always looked for a center to play with Alex Ovechkin, and they've always looked for a center to play with Phil Kessel, and Phil Kessel got the center he wanted by asking them to re-sign Tyler Bozak.
Bozak is there specifically so he doesn't cry.
Right. And Tyler Bozak's serviceable, but he's not a number one center.
No, he's not.
I also compared him to Patrick Kane, right? If you flipped Phil Kessel and Patrick Kane, they'd probably be similar results, right? Mm-hmm. Where Patrick Kane would be the guy that's vilified for not being able to lead the team all his own, and Phil Kessel would be the guy that's revered as an all-world talent, one of the best American player, and all that nonsense. Mm-hmm. And really, what it boils down to is that it turned into a Phil Kessel story when it shouldn't be a Phil Kessel story. They fired Randy Carlyle, even though Randy Carlyle is not the problem.
I would disagree about that.
You think this Maple Leafs roster is good enough to compete with a better coach? If they get a better coach in there, that this Maple Leafs team is a Stanley Cup type team?
I do, and here's why.
Really?
My point is that, yes, Randy Carlyle got more than was probably possible out of this group of players. But the biggest thing that I could knock the Leafs for since he took over was that the mental toughness, I guess, just wasn't there. Anytime this team came up against any sort of resistance, even if they got off to a hot start, if they faced any sort of resistance, they crumbled completely. The playoff collapse against Boston, Game 7. They have, a 3-goal lead with 10 minutes left in the game. Boston scores 1 goal. Instead of toughening their resolve and keeping the game close, they completely collapse and let Boston come back. Last season, at the end of the season, that 9-game losing streak, they're in the playoff race entering the final month or so of the season, and they lose 1 game, they lose 2 games, and then the team collapses. And it became very apparent watching those games that near the end of that losing streak, this team had just kind of given up. And then this season, I saw this firsthand with the last couple of games the Maple Leafs have been playing. They give up a 2-goal lead to the Panthers in the third period, lose a game. They have a 2-goal lead up on Tampa Bay. They end up losing the game. Granted, it's only a 1-goal lead, but they had the lead up on the Jets before they allowed 5. This is a team that you almost don't feel safe with like a 3-goal lead, because if the other team manages to get 1, then the whole team is just going to collapse around it. And I think part of that is coaching, in that there is a team mentality that coaching plays a role in, and it's just not working, and that needed to be changed.
Yeah. I won't argue. Randy Carlyle was a bad coach in Toronto. He was. And really, he was kind of a bad coach at the end of his time in Anaheim. So here's my argument. My other argument, that the Maple Leafs just really aren't the most well-organized franchise.
The problem with the Maple Leafs is, and I've been saying this for years, it's that it's such a bloated corporate entity that, honestly, the people within it don't know who's running it. Is the CEO of MLSE, does he have final say? Does the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs organization within MLSE have final say? What about the GM, director of hockey operations? The corporate end of things needs to be streamlined if this team is going to go anywhere. You basically need one guy to run everything, and you have to give him the freedom to delegate as he sees fit.
So do you want to keep going forward with the roster as currently constructed? Or would you like to blow the thing up?
I think there are some pieces that they have that are worth hanging on to, but I would blow it up.
The problem is their two most traded, like they're not going to trade guys like Kadri or Bernier or Reimer or Riley, because those are guys to build around. Mm-hmm. The guys that they would want to trade, probably Dion Phaneuf and Phil Kessel, they paid them so much money that they're not worth that anywhere else. You're not going to be able to trade Phil Kessel. Mm-hmm. For at least for an equal return. You're not going to be able to trade Dion Phaneuf. I don't know if anyone wants to take on Dion Phaneuf's money, because that's way too much money for Dion Phaneuf that they paid him.
Dion Phaneuf has not lived up to his expectations since coming to Toronto, and I guess he's the captain due to no one else really being there.
He's just not Phaneuf. I'm sorry.
Well, the thing that's interesting with Phaneuf, and it's kind of another bigger problem with the Maple Leafs, he's one of the few big name type guys that want to and still wants to play in Toronto. You have all these big name free agents, and you think the Maple Leafs, with more money than God, could buy anyone they wanted to play for them. You saw it with like Brad Richards. He didn't want to go there. Rick Nash. He didn't want to go there. And if they miss out on Steven Stamkos in 2 years, I don't know who's ever going to want to go to Toronto.
Is it because of the media scrutiny and just the
it's the media, it's the family, it's because I think there's like 30% of the players in the NHL come from Ontario, and when you mean Ontario, you generally mean the
Southern
GTA
Ontario.
or Southern Ontario.
Yeah,
right.
Like Stamkos playing in Tampa Bay, he could probably go to the grocery store and not be too bothered.
Yeah.
Like if the Lightning have a bad day or the power play's not working, nobody's going to come up to in the produce aisle and be like, "Hey, Stammer, you got to do something on the PP here. You know, you got to get this team going." But if he does it in Toronto, he goes out for just like a sandwich, and someone's going to be all up in his grill like, "Hey, you need to get down low. You need to start working the points." Like trying to talk strategy with these guys, and some of them just don't want to deal with that because it's everywhere. It's all engrossing.
I mean, the thing about Rick Nash was that Rick Nash was content to breeze to mediocrity in Columbus, and he'd probably still be there if they hadn't forced him out. There is a mentality that the pressures in Toronto are just too much, and I understand that. But at the same time, there's nothing the Maple Leafs can do about that. There's nothing anyone can do about that. I mean, you're not going to...
It is what it is.
Well, here's my question. If they're packing the place every night, and I'm sure they've got a huge TV deal, making money just like they're printing it in the back room, what's the inspiration for trying to get better? I mean,
well, that's been another problem, is that MLSE is too successful. It's been so successful that they can sell out and they can sell out top merchandise sales charts, do everything right on the money end of things, and there really isn't an expectation that people honestly want them to see them get better, but on the corporate end of things, there's no desire to push themselves to do it because they're going to make money anyway.
Right. I mean, if you're already sold out, you're already getting good TV ratings, you're getting good ad revenue, the whole bit. winning is great, but and unfortunately, it just seems to me like it would turn out to be that it's not the most important thing. Because, okay, they win a cup, but really, how much does that change everything money-wise for the Toronto Maple Leafs and the organization?
If the
it
Maple
makes
Leafs
people happy.
Yeah,
it makes people not hate their existence.
They're still showing up.
I know, but right.
I mean, I'm not saying they should just sit back and cruise. Not at all. My feeling is, from what I'm listening to you guys say, is there's not a lot of urgency to try to make this team better.
The corporate end of things is such a mess that even if you have someone who has that urgency, their ability to do their job effectively is hampered because no one's really sure within MLSE who makes the important decisions, which is kind of a problem.
Yeah, I would say.
You know what else I likened kind of the Maple Leaf situation to? The Maple Leafs have Dallas Cowboys syndrome. In that, they make the playoffs 2 years ago with a subpar roster, and they get into the playoffs, and all of a sudden, despite them, they go to Game 7, and they're like, well, we should have won that Game 7. We're good enough to compete in this league. We're going to win the Cup next year. And then they don't make the playoffs. And then you overreact and you panic, and everyone gets mad and angry. And then so you're constantly trying to get better, because the Maple Leafs are – I don't know if they're a team that could ever bottom out. They're like –
Are they in the dreaded middle, basically?
Yeah, I think
tough
so.
Spot, yeah.
They're,
which is why I say blow it up, get to the bottom of the pack.
Right, but very few Maple Leafs fans are like you, Mike. They're not gonna allow the Maple Leafs to bottom out for a year or two.
But here's the thing: the Maple Leafs, aren't the San Jose Sharks, so to say. Where the Sharks are definitely afraid of rebuilding because they're afraid that if they do rebuild, the fan base might abandon them, and the fan base might think they're too good enough to have to suffer through a rebuilding process. To Greg's point, this is a case where the Maple Leafs' financial stability might be a good thing in that they have fostered enough brand loyalty to go through a rebuilding phase because they don't have to worry about completely cannibalizing their fan base by starting over.
But they don't.
No, exactly. They don't have to.
They can. They have the ability to. If there was any team in the league that could survive 2 down years, two Buffalo or Edmonton years, it would be the Maple Leafs. But
yeah.
They've been trying so hard for so long to not do that. I think now that they're under new ownership, well, not necessarily new ownership, but new management with Brendan Shanahan and bringing in some of these analytic guys and finally getting rid of Carlisle. And I think Dave Nonis will probably be on his way out by the end of the year. They got to flush everything out of the system to kind of restart things. They could have just held on to Carlisle till the end of the season and try to make a run with it. Mm-hmm. Or they get rid of Carlisle now. They put in your average white bread NHL coach in Pete Horacek. Then they do the rest of the season and say, well, we know that we had a bad coach. Let's see if it's just the coach or if what players we need to get rid of. Yes. And the rest of the season is going to be player evaluation. And then they're just going to try to cleanse this thing. Because there are the pieces there. I got on them saying they made the playoffs and that they thought that they could go to the next level, but they had the pieces there. They finally made that playoff run that they were waiting for so long that you had the base to build from, but they didn't necessarily improve. They just kind of kept with what they were doing, and James Reimer regressed a little bit, and then everything kind of went to hell.
So we established that it's really not Phil Kessel's fault?
No, it's not Phil Kessel's fault.
I had a feeling it wasn't probably really his fault in the first place, but...
Phil Kessel also does himself Phil Kessel isn't Barry Bonds in that he's not an asshole to the media, but he's not very personable either. So you have the combination of the unrealistic expectations of the Toronto media, plus the fact that he's not very personable with them equals they tend to shit on him whenever they get the chance to.
For what I understand, he's not very personable amongst his teammates either.
There's Tyler Bozak.
Well, yeah, but he's a sad puppy that Phil's, brought along.
I'll see. Stuart Scott.
Yeah. It's just a third time with cancer. It's
yeah.
You gotta commend him for fighting the way he did.
I will say this: I was never a big fan of his, but it's a shame to see anybody go at such a young age.
He was a guy that really kind of changed, or not necessarily changed SportsCenter, because you had Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann, and they were the fun, exciting guys. But Stuart Scott took it up to a different notch.
Well, he definitely brought in the
the hip hop culture.
Yeah,
Cool as the other side of the pillow. Ray, Janisha, everybody.
People want to call it hip hop.
Can I get a witness from the congregation?
He was trying to appeal to the black demographic, and that's great. I think that's a cool thing.
It's called the urban market, Greg. Let's not be racist.
Okay.
And because you look at sportscasters, it's a bunch of vanilla ass white dudes.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah. As fun and hip as we thought Keith Olbermann and Dan Patrick were, they are almost as white bread. They're whiter than white bread.
Keith Olbermann got pretty edgy when he put on that leather jacket for ESPN too.
I watched the clip of that. God,
Keith Olbermann putting on the leather jacket was also Stuart Scott's first ever appearance on an ESPN platform.
Right. I remembered the leather jacket, but I'd forgotten how horrible that shirt was that he wore with that leather jacket. Oh my God.
The 90s were a fun time, man.
I'm telling you, man. But
especially when you look at that stuff, and it's the original ESPN2 logo is one of the stupidest things.
with the giant 2 carved into the TV screen,
all lowercase ESPNN, and then the curvy 2 because it's extreme. And there was NHL 2 Night that was always on ESPN.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was the 90s.
Yeah, it was just, yeah.
But you know what, though? I mean, I was going to say it fit in at the time, but even back then it was like, wow, they're trying way too hard with this.
ESPN2 was your home for salsa.
Ah, that's right. They played roller hockey, didn't they? They televised it.
Well, beach hockey.
Beach hockey, excuse me.
Different game. Beach hockey had ramps, Greg.
Oh, that's right. It did, didn't it?
Ramps behind the nets, yes.
That's right, yeah. Glad we got that settled.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought we'd bring up Stuart Scott real quick, since once upon a time this show used to be about sports and media. And
right?
All that, so.
Yeah, I was going to use that as the transition if I had done it, but yeah.
Remember when that was originally our goal with the show, was to be about that?
Why is there a TV in our logo, Greg?
Because we want it to be there.
But yeah, no, that's it's just it's not necessarily that he was like one of the more groundbreaking guys either. It's just he was one of the more memorable SportsCenter guys.
Oh, definitely.
You know who Stuart Scott was.
And I'll tell you this, too. I think that he was very good. I've never been a big fan of SportsCenter. I mean, even when Dan and Keith, I was kind of eh. But I thought he did an outstanding job when he hosted the Monday Night Football stuff and that kind of thing. I thought he was great at that. I was just never a fan of the SportsCenter Stuart Scott. I think where he lost me was the Poetry Slam. That was probably where I thought, yeah, this is a bridge too far for me. It's just a shame to see him go at such a young age.
Yeah, 49.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, and the thing that really struck me was I was really bummed when I first saw that news, but I was kind of taken aback by the amount of tribute to him.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, not like I expected it from ESPN or from his former coworkers. Did you see Rich Eisen's highlight package?
I did, yeah.
That killed me. And him doing the highlight package using all of Stuart Scott's catchphrases was awesome. But for President Obama to release a statement about him, and for a moment of silence before both NFL games,
yeah,
I was surprised. When I was watching the CBS broadcast of the Colts game, I didn't expect them to say anything about Stuart Scott, because he didn't work for CBS ever. Mm. But they still did a moment of silence for him, on the broadcast. Jim Nantz did a little thing. And I was like, oh, wow. I mean, I knew that he was one of the more popular SportsCenter guys, and he was especially a big thing to the black community in terms of them, getting into a national sports conversation. But it really surprised me at how, it almost seemed like people were overdoing it. Like I said, I have a lot of respect for the guy, but there was a certain point where it's all right, I like Stuart Scott too, but he wasn't Howard Cosell.
Well, part of me, the cynic in me, thought, okay, now we're just trying to outdo each other here.
Yeah.
But that always happens. I mean, it's just something you got to get used to. Someone dies, everyone's got to be the guy who cares more.
When I heard that there was a moment of silence before the games,
right,
I was like, okay. Yeah, he hosted Monday Night Countdown, but for the NFL to do that, that's a little if Al Michaels died, would they have a moment of silence? I guess they have to now, right?
Well, yeah, now. Yeah, because if you're going to do it for Stuart Scott, you have to do it for Al Michaels.
Stuart Scott never suffered the indignity of being traded for a cartoon rabbit.
Well, Al Michaels is never going to die because he's going to be reanimated by plastic surgery every offseason.
There you go.
Like when he comes back for the Hall of Fame game every year, it is just astounding how tight his face is.
The Hall of Fame. Curt Schilling. Did you guys hear what Curt Schilling said? We'll get to that in a minute.
That he didn't get voted in because he's a Republican?
Right. And John Smoltz is a Democrat, except that he's not. But anyway, go ahead, Zach.
Well,
I didn't even know Curt Schilling was a Republican.
Really?
I don't make it my business to know the political orientations of I just don't care enough.
Yeah, he makes it a point to let everybody know that he is.
Well, first, Greg, since you're the baseball man here, do you like the class?
Yes, I do. I do. I have no argument with any of the four guys that were put in. None.
The only guy I would have slight argument with is maybe John Smoltz. And, well, no, not John Smoltz. You know what? Craig Biggio.
No, 3,000 hits that's the golden ticket, man.
But Craig Biggio,
he's in more for the 3,000 hits, I think, than he is because he was a dominant player of his era.
And especially because, was he dominant?
No, he wasn't at all.
You think of those Astros teams, and his teammate Jeff Bagwell, who gets left out.
But would
you rather have Biggio or Bagwell?
On my team?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. Am I getting Bagwell pre-steroids or after steroids? That's the big question. But no, Biggio, I think when a guy gets 3,000 hits, you have to recognize that. I don't have a problem with that. I think Pedro Martinez, again.
Pedro and Randy Johnson were locks.
And you want to talk about like traditional stats and all that. Pedro didn't rack up 300 wins or anything, but my God, when that guy was at his peak, I've never seen a pitcher as good as he was when he was at the height of his ability. And
I'd say the same with Randy Johnson.
Randy Johnson, too, yeah. Smoltz,
It's hard for him because he had two different roles in his career.
Right. And then I think about it, and I think, okay, when they talk about pitchers of that era, his name's going to come up every single time. So, yeah, I think he's a Hall of Famer. So
yeah,
I'm okay with all of them.
He goes in after Glavine and after Maddox.
Yeah.
But he's the third guy.
But, yeah, I'm okay with it. And I'm okay that some of the guys that were left out.
Curt Schilling.
Yeah, I think
Curt Schilling should have been in there.
No, I don't. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. No.
You don't?
I think he is.
Yeah, okay.
I'll go to bat. I'll go to bat for Curt Schilling.
You think simply about his World Series runs with the Phillies in '93, the Diamondbacks in '01, and the couple years with the Red Sox.
But we all know how that '93 run for the Phillies ended, don't we? That's right.
Touch 'em all, Joe.
That's right.
I got to look at it from the entirety of his career. I mean, yeah, he was really something in the playoffs and in the postseason, but
the Red Sox, Greg.
Yeah, that was bullshit. He faked that whole thing.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
He tweeted a picture of a stitched-up ankle.
I don't care if his ankle was stitched up or not. He still faked it.
Okay.
Anyway, I think Curt Schilling is a guy. I think you can make an argument both ways. And you guys know how I am about my Hall of Fame voting. If you can make an argument both ways, then you shouldn't be in.
If it were up to you, Greg, the Hall of Fame would be like Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, and Hank Aaron.
Pretty much. There would be a lot of guys that wouldn't be in there right now. I don't know. I'd have to look at Schilling's numbers again, but I don't know. He was around for a long time. He was a good pitcher for a long time. Okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I
think Curt Schilling needs to be in there.
Yeah,
Mike Piazza should be in there too.
Yeah, but there's steroid speculation. That's the thing.
But he was never on any, opposed to some of these guys that have the speculation, Piazza was never actually on any steroid lists or never test positive. People always thought he did. It's the same with Jeff Bagwell. Jeff Bagwell and him are in the same boat where people think, they're like, he did steroids. And it's like, when people actually look it up, it's like, well, no one ever actually accused them of doing it.
There were rumors
about. There's no hard evidence.
There were rumors about Piazza, but here's the thing with Piazza too. He never had what I thought were outrageous power numbers for a player of his ability. So maybe he wasn't. He was clearly the best offensive catcher of all time.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with putting Piazza in. I'm kind of surprised he didn't make it, but he's still got that steroid specter, and that's the thing. Something's got to be done about that because you've got to figure out, okay, the clear-cut guys like Bonds, I can understand that. Clemens, I can understand that. But you got a guy like Piazza, it's like if it's not as obvious as it is with Bonds or Clemens, then maybe you got to just give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know.
Well, and you know what? I was thinking about it as I heard about all the discussions with the Hall of Fame over the week. I've come to a revelation. I don't care about steroids anymore. I just don't.
I have a real problem with it.
It was the era. Some of these guys, like, are you really going to go through the whole entire existence of the Hall of Fame and not acknowledge that Roger Clemens was one of the best pitchers of all time and that Barry Bonds was one of the best hitters of all time?
Yeah, yes. Screw him.
Yeah,
Really?
I'm sorry, yeah.
I'm just over it.
Here's the thing. Bonds was a Hall of Famer.
Put an asterisk on the plaque or something, but I don't know. I don't care anymore.
Well, I understand why you wouldn't care, but the fact remains that these guys, Clemens, first off, maybe not so much with Bonds. I think he was a Hall of Famer before he started taking steroids, so I'm okay if you want to put him in and say, okay, we're doing this based on what he did before the steroids. That's fine because I've got no argument with that. Roger Clemens was done. He was finished. When he went to Toronto, it was over for him. He wasn't that good anymore. And all of a sudden, he comes back and he looks like a freaking pro wrestler, and he gets good again. I'm sorry, but the second half of his career was completely and totally fake. I just cannot abide by that. You know, with Bonds, that's not the case. Bonds was good before it all happened. Clemens was good for a little while. Went down the other side of the hill like he's supposed to at the age that he did. And all of a sudden he comes back and he's more dominant than ever. That doesn't happen. That's my issue with Clemens. You're just going to have to take it on a case-by-case basis, I guess.
At the end of the day, it's cheating. It's cheating plain and simple. And I feel that if you take the attitude of, well, it's just the era, we have to acknowledge them, then it's condoning it to one degree or another.
Yeah, kind of.
So I don't know. I'd say keep him out. You know what? If Pete Rose can be kept out for this long, keep Barry Bonds out. I don't care. Guy was a prick anyway, so screw him.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
You know what, though? That's the other thing that bothers me about this, is with the writers. There are a lot of guys that just don't vote for someone because they didn't like them.
Well, that was my next point, was that the first thing we have to do with the Hall of Fame is we have to end this baseball writers only in the voting process.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to convince me. I used to work with a guy when I was in New York. I'm not going to mention his name, but he wrote for the equivalent of the freaking penny saver, okay? But he had pimped his way around enough and all that, so there was actually consideration of giving this guy a Hall of Fame vote. Now, he had about as much right to have a Hall of Fame vote as me sitting down a bunch of names and having my cats go, pick out 3 names, that's who we're going to vote for. So the voting process needs to be changed. It needs to be like a blue ribbon panel or whatever you want to call it, but you got to get guys that aren't just writers involved in this.
Right. Like, you think of baseball historians, like, not even just baseball historians, but you think of, like, guys that broadcast about baseball that don't have a vote. Like Vince Scully doesn't have a Hall of Fame vote.
Nope.
Keith Olbermann, no Hall of Fame vote. Bob Costas. No Hall of Fame vote. Brian Kenny, no Hall of Fame vote.
Right.
And you think these guys don't follow the game just as much or probably more, and especially the history of the game?
There was a guy that wrote for the Philadelphia, whatever their newspaper is. I can't remember. Is it the Inquirer? Is that right?
Yeah, Inquirer, yes.
His name was, you might even remember him. He used to be on Sports Reporter. His name was Bill Conklin. Do you remember him? Big, giant, huge guy.
Yeah.
He was on Sports Reporters, this was years ago, where he basically came out and said he never votes for anybody in their first year of eligibility.
Right.
What's the logic for that?
That's the other thing. That's another part about this whole process that I don't like. Why do you have to limit the guys?
You don't.
Why can't you just vote for everybody?
Yeah.
Like, if someone's a Hall of Famer, what is going to change between year 1 and year 2?
I know they have the thing, they're only allowed to vote for up to 10 players, right?
Right, which is asinine.
Yeah, and that kills me. Another thing that kills me is he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't even know what that means, because there aren't levels at the Hall of Fame. It isn't like, well, this guy was a third ballot. This is the third ballot floor, and this is they're all in. You're either a Hall of Famer or you're not. McCarthy, friend of the show, brought it up on the boards. He said that your stats don't change in 10 years. You don't pick up another 100 home runs or another 20 points in your batting average.
Right. They get 15 years on the ballot, right?
Yeah.
Until they go to the Veterans Committee.
Right.
Like, because I think this was Don Mattingly's last year, and he didn't get in.
No, and he shouldn't, because he's not a Hall of Famer. He never will be. No, he's not. That one I'll argue to the death. He's not a Hall of Famer.
I'm not going to argue on it. I was just saying, you know.
No, he's not. He was a good player, but he was not Hall of Fame caliber. Right. And that's not even my ridiculously high standards talking. He just wasn't. But the voting process has to be changed. We need to get a committee. I even say have a fan aspect to it, and not like idiots that just, stuff the all-star ballots, whatever. But you can find out if a fan is knowledgeable enough to make a Hall of Fame vote or not. Have some sort of entrance exam, I don't know, but just leaving it to these idiot sports writers is just a really, really bad idea.
So here's my hashtag hot take.
Yeah, your hashtag hot take.
Because we talked about a lot of interesting things there, but none of them are my hashtag hot take. Hashtag hot take. Why do we have Hall of Fames?
Well, it's Halls of Fame, but why? I don't know.
Halls of Fame, whatever. Because when you think about it, supposedly these things are supposed to be museums to the histories of the game, right?
Yeah.
And essentially, when these people are voting, they're essentially voting on exhibits in a museum.
Okay.
Correct?
Yeah.
And we're there trying to chart the history of the game.
Right.
So, like, if you go to the Museum of Natural History, do we have to vote whether or not, the tectonic plates get into the museum?
No, but how cool would it be if we did?
You know what, guys? Stegosaurus didn't have the numbers.
Didn't put up the career that the Tyrannosaurus Rex did. I'm sorry. And I don't know how you can leave the Velociraptor out. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, Velociraptor should have been a first ballot.
Yeah.
But if the Protozoa don't get it on the first ballot, nobody does. So.
Well, no, I'll tell you what Velociraptor's problem was that, he went and pimped himself out to Jurassic Park. People thought he was vote buying.
Yeah, that's true. There was a lot of talk about that back when it happened, yeah. But, yeah, you're right. We don't vote on Apollo 11 being in the Smithsonian. It's just there because it should be.
There.
Yeah.
So, because you get a lot of these guys, you look at some of the votes, Aaron Boone actually got 2 Hall of Fame votes, right? But when you think about it, when you think of, Hall of Fame, that's a famous moment in baseball.
Oh, sure.
And so Aaron Boone's not necessarily going to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not advocating for that. But it's a moment in the history of baseball, and that's probably something that should at least be documented somewhere in there.
I'm sure it probably
I'm sure
is.
They might have, a bat from it or something.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, if we're I know they collect memorabilia for this stuff all the time.
Yep.
So why do we have to vote on players if all of these moments are going to be in the hall?
That's a good point.
That's another reason to let the steroid era in, and you put that as part of the museum, and you explain that era of baseball. And so you don't necessarily have to have a shrine to Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens or Mark McGwire, but you can talk about them because they're part of the history of the game.
You know what? That's a good argument. I can't say I disagree with any of that. You're talking about just make it like the Smithsonian. It just documents what happens, not necessarily who's warrants being in there, but just things that happened that warranted being in there.
Because some of these arguments for who's a Hall of Fame player are just kind of dumb. There's a lot of these guys, and I know you've always thought of it. If you have to make the argument, then they're not Hall of Famers. But you think of a guy, and I know this is something that Bill Simmons uses all the time. It's like, well, are you going to be bouncing your grandkids on your knee talking about this player? You look at Craig Biggio, and it's like, well,
no.
Are you going to talk about Craig Biggio like that? No.
Nope.
but he has the Hall of Fame numbers. But is he a Hall of Fame player? When you think of Hall of Fame,
we do seem to kind of tend to leave the fame part out of it.
Right.
People
have made these arbitrary designations for what they believe are Hall of Fame numbers. And it's like, yeah, Craig Biggio got 3,000 hits. But when you're thinking of, the great players of all time, the pantheon of Hall of Famers,
he's not there.
Craig Biggio.
If you walked up to me tomorrow and said, name your top 5 second baseman, his name wouldn't come up.
Sure.
And
top 10?
No, probably not. I wouldn't even think of him.
No.
I mean, it's not because I don't think he deserves it.
I would never think of Craig Biggio.
Right. He would just never occur to me.
Right.
I got to be honest. You have actually changed my entire viewpoint on this thing with that argument. I think that's great.
My only question is, what replaces? So if we're just going to get rid of the concept of the Hall of Fame and just make it museums to the history of the game,
you can still call it the Hall of Fame, but you can be it's a tribute to the history of the game. I don't know what you would call it, but it's documenting the history of the sport.
But the things like the plaques and honoring certain players, I mean, that would all have to be done away with, right? If we're just saying this is the history of the game.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm going to do an experiment here to kind of prove Zach's point.
Okay.
All right? There was a very famous baseball game. I'm sure you guys have all heard of it. The Giants won the pennant. The Giants won the pennant, right?
Sure,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The guy that hit the home run, Bobby Thompson.
Yeah, Bobby Thompson.
Not a Hall of Famer.
No.
All right? Do you know who Alvin Dark is?
No.
Okay. Have you ever heard of Eddie Stanky?
No.
Some of those guys are probably early on in the history of baseball, and they probably have really good numbers. And if I've never been to the thing, but if you go and you looked at like the turn of the century baseball, you'd be like, oh, that's neat. This guy did that. That's kind of cool.
Okay, Stanky wasn't a Hall of Famer, but I think you're getting the point. Let me see here.
But like you will always remember Mark McGwire,
right?
But he may never end up being in the Hall of Fame.
Let me see another.
We'll always remember Barry Bonds. We'll always remember. Sammy Sosa is probably never even going to get a sniff.
No.
But you remember Sammy Sosa?
Yeah, I
But
do.
here's the thing, not fondly. That's
No, but okay, but before all the steroid stuff came out, he was averaging like 50 home runs a year.
Yeah, he was, but then the steroid stuff came out, and we all realized why he was.
Well, and the cork bat.
And the cork bat, yeah.
And now he's white.
And he doesn't know how to use Instagram.
Of all the things he's done, I think turning white was probably the most remarkable. I've never seen anyone do that. Well, Michael
Jackson.
Yeah, but there's two guys in all the history: Michael Jackson and Sammy Sosa.
Right.
I'm trying to find out.
Check out Sammy Sosa's Instagram account. It's hilarious.
But then here's another one. Like, you think of Aaron Boone. You know who Aaron Boone is. I know who Bucky Effin Dent is.
Yep.
But
that's another good
Dent's
one.
Not a Hall of Famer.
That's a good one. Okay, there's another good game. Let me look that up real quick.
The Yankees-Red Sox playoff.
Yeah, I want to see. But I'm sure there are names on there that you guys have no idea who they are that are in the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
Let me see here real quick. I'm pretty sure you probably know who Thurman Munson is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know of his mustache.
Okay. Sparky Lyle. You know who he is?
No.
Yeah, okay. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
I love old baseball because of names like Sparky.
Yeah. Catfish Hunter. I'm sure you've heard of him, right?
I know Catfish Hunter.
Okay, but he's a guy that did both. He put up the numbers and he was famous enough to warrant consideration.
You don't have to add things all the time, but museums, they add new exhibits, not all the time, but eventually, because history has to pass. So maybe you wait 20 years, and then you right now we'd be adding the 1990s part of the Hall of Fame. Because you have to have some time to distance it and determine what is actually memorable or famous or important.
Right. What's stuck. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. That's one way to end the argument because you're right. In 20 years, you're going to say Craig Biggio, and I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, that's right. Played for the Astros, right? And that's how I'm going to remember him.
Right. I mean, because you think of that Astros team, they only made the World Series the one time where they lost to the White Sox.
Yep.
Other than that,
like I said, if I sat down right now and said, if we hadn't had this conversation, you say name your top 10 second baseman, Craig Biggio's name would not even come up at all.
Speaking of old timey baseball players, this is a player for the 1923. He played one season for the New York Giants. He was a Jewish guy named Mos Hirsch Solomon. His nickname was, and this is where it gets good, the Rabbi of SWAT.
I can't believe we're this far into the show and you guys won't let me announce the greatest announcement.
Okay.
This is earth-shattering, gentlemen. I hope you haven't heard about it yet. It will change the face of sports as we know it. This is huge. Okay? NBC Sports Network announced, are you ready? Curling night, NBC Sports Network, Curling Night in America.
Oh!
I'm telling you. Come on now. Is that not the greatest thing ever? Good. Curling Night in America.
I'm going to the nearest sports bar and setting up a game night at that.
I mean, come on. This is like a dream come true, right?
He's going for Curling Night in America.
It's a dream come true, right?
It's everything that I've ever wanted.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, if curling became popular, I'm pretty sure I would drop the Ducks for whatever curling team.
Oh, absolutely.
Runs. The Anaheim Bullfrogs.
But yes,
right,
Curling Night in America. This is the greatest thing ever. Okay, here we go. Curling Night in America is coming to NBC Sports Network. I will give you the dates and times. And this is going to work out well for you, Zach, because they're all at 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, yes!
Okay. Starting
8 p.m. is the perfect drinking time. Let's go.
January 23rd. Okay, it's a 6-week event.
Oh.
January 23rd, February 6th, February 13th.
Oh, no, it's more than that.
Wait.
That's replays on Universal Sports. I see the article. It's on Awful Announcing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's my big announcement.
Oh, damn it! the event was taped in December.
Oh.
So don't look up the spoilers, Greg.
I got it. How am I going to miss
Avoid the curling spoilers.
How am I going to miss that?
Curling spoilers. This is going to be my favorite show. No spoilers. Do not tweet me any spoilers for
But you know what?
Night in America.
I am dead serious about this. I think NBC Sports Network is going to be shocked at the ratings. I'm not saying they're going to get like huge ratings, but
Well, they're not going to get a whole lot of ratings in the East because it's at night.
Yeah.
But you know what? Since it's at night, that's like the time. Well, what days are those? Are those Fridays?
Let me see real quick.
I think those are Fridays.
Yeah.
Friday night, curling night in America.
And nothing else on
Forget
at 11 o'clock.
Forget Friday Night Lights. It's all about the Friday night.
But that is my big announcement. I knew that you guys would be thrilled. I'm sure that the listening audience will be thrilled.
I mean, look, I don't want to overstate anything, but I think I'm on point when I say that curling is the greatest thing in sports history.
Without a doubt. I mean, when the Olympics came around, we talked hockey, but you could just tell by listening that our hearts were with curling the whole time.
No, I'm not even kidding you. We might have to reschedule our recording times just so we can get Curling Night in America into the program each week.
Well,
because
see, if we really
we'll be a week behind every time.
Well, yeah, they've already played all this stuff, though, right?
But we don't.
Shh.
Okay. But anyway, I thought you guys would be happy to hear that Curling Night in America. It's long overdue, and it's about time someone got on the stick down here and got this done.
I mean, I come from a country that is not spoiled, that is spoiled for curling. So seeing the Americans finally get on board with off-year curling is fantastic.
This is everything that I've ever wanted.
I know.
Nothing more could happen in sports to make me any happier.
That's what I'm saying. I agree completely.
Curling Night in America.
How great is just the title alone? I want a T-shirt. I'm going to get all the gear.
I mean, it's not just the United States. It's in America.
Exactly.
All of it.
Right. It's beautiful.
It's like curling night in Minnesota, curling night in Manitoba. No. Curling night in America.
That's right.
I mean, nothing screams America like Friday night curling.
It's gonna knock bowling off as the top sport. It's gonna knock it right out of there.
It was the inaugural U.S. Curling Grand Prix.
Oh, and you know what? Just to add to this already huge news, ESPN is doing some curling events as well.
Guys.
This is huge.
The difference is the ESPN one is going to be ESPN 3. And it's the European Curling Championships.
Oh, well, you just might as well give it to Norway every year.
Well, no.
Does that mean we'll get to see the Norway pants? Will they still wear those, you think? In the regular season, or is that just an Olympic thing?
The regular season of curling.
No, because the teams, there was only 4 teams in the inaugural Grand Prix. It was the U.S., China, Japan, and New Zealand.
Oh, man, that's a clash of the Titans right there.
But I don't care. That means we're the favorites in our national curling event.
Oh, how we've already kind of taken hockey away from Canada. How pissed are they going to be if we take curling, too?
I mean, now that it's getting national exposure on television,
well,
it's the next big thing.
Who says you took hockey away from us?
I'm just saying, you guys haven't won a Stanley Cup in how long now? Since '93?
I mean, we forgot to mention, though, forget all the Stanley Cups that Canada hasn't won. They won World Junior Gold for the first time in 4 years.
Hey,
yeah.
All right. Good for them.
Beat Russia in a nail-biter, but you know what?
I don't know if you beat Russia or you almost lost to Russia.
Hey.
You were up 5-1, and then all of a sudden it was 5-4?
Yeah.
And then everyone was like, oh my God, no, not again.
But you hung on and got it done, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So anyway, that was my big announcement. Now we can all I think we'll all be a bit happier as we go outside into the frigid cold, and there'll be a bounce in our step and everything else.
You realize that the rest of the show is going to be completely anticlimactic now.
Well, yeah, I probably should have saved that for the end, but I just couldn't contain it any longer. I had to bring it up.
It's, wow.
Yeah, where do you go from there? I know. Ladies and gentlemen, Zach's Tabs.
Zach's Tabs!
Nice, very well done.
Well, let's first start off with the national championship game in college football that is coming up on Monday.
Go Bucks.
Nike announced the uniforms that are going to be used.
Boo!
They're not just going to be the same uniforms. But Mike, Greg, I showed this to Greg already, but Deadspin made an article about the uniforms that they were released.
This is the greatest thing ever, Mike.
The title of the article, and I think you would appreciate this, Oregon's new uniforms are sewn together with lies.
Yes!
Because when Nike initially announced that the Oregon was going to be wearing the black, silver, and white uniforms.
They're Raiders uniforms, basically.
Yeah. The promotional pictures, the O on their collar wasn't sewn on completely straight. And so instead of it just being, it's a manufacturing defect, it happens, Nike actually put this in their press release.
This is the greatest...
Is the Nikeest speak of all Nike speaks.
This is the greatest Nike speak of all time.
Additionally, the Oregon O chest graphic is placed at a 27-degree tilt, representing the Ducks' 27 bowl appearances.
Hello?
I had to put my headset down for a moment. That place needs to be purged. Just fuck Nike.
The New York Knicks are awful.
Yeah.
They are terrible. I think they're 5-33.
They're bad. I don't know their exact record, but I know they're bad.
I know they're bad, but here's the reason that I need to bring this up.
Okay.
Because the Knicks are so bad that the New York Times is taking their Knicks beat reporter off the Knicks beat and having him cover other basketball games.
Wow.
He will cover the Knicks on the road, but he will no longer cover home games in Madison Square Garden this season.
Because what's the point, basically?
Well, this is what they said. The Knicks, in an effort to rebuild through the NBA draft and free agency, appear to have officially given up on this season. They're an unthinkable 5-32, and on Monday night they traded away J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert, leaving a roster that might struggle against an NBA developmental league team. So the sports department's editors feel it is only merciful to give our Knicks beat reporter, Scott Cacciola, a break from such woeful basketball. He deserves to see the game played at a higher level. For the next month or so, we would like to point him to some good quality basketball wherever it may be. Any suggestions?
Wow.
Maybe there's another
I don't
NBA
know.
team that warrants his attention, or maybe there's a high school or college squad. For that matter, maybe you know of a strong co-ed team at your local Y that's Scott Spreaker. Tell us where to send them, submit your ideas in the comments section.
That's cold, man. But, they're right. Why waste a guy's time? What are you going to write?
What's he going to say? The team sucked again?
Right. What are you going to write after 2 or 3 times? They're god-awful.
Right. This isn't like the Post pulling a stunt.
No.
This is the New York Times saying, we don't give a shit about the Knicks.
Good for them. I'm glad they did that.
Anyway, let's see. Do I have anything else?
Karate Chop Moses.
I know.
I'm already rolling around in my head. What kind of action themes are we going to play while we talk about this?
I have one more thing before we go to Karate Chop Moses.
Okay.
And this should be just especially painful for you, Greg.
Oh, great. I don't have enough problems.
So we all know who Paul McCartney is, right? The leader of the Beatles.
Uh-huh.
The greatest musicians of all time.
Yeah.
One of the greatest bands of all time.
Yeah.
Well, Kanye West and Paul McCartney recorded a song together.
Yeah.
Recently.
Oh, God.
So they released it. And, the song it's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah, it's nothing special. It's not awful.
Right.
It's not great.
But the fact is, Kanye West and Paul McCartney have 2 different demographics.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The urban market, as we alluded
one of
to.
those demographics may not know who Paul McCartney is.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people, thankfully a little bit younger than us, Mike,
Okay.
on Twitter, talking about they don't know who Paul McCartney is.
Oh, that's nothing. The best part was somebody said, you know what? Being in this video with Kanye is really going to help the old guy's career.
I know.
That doesn't surprise me, though. It honestly doesn't.
Who's the old guy? It's really going to help his career being in this Kanye West video, and oh my God.
Really, though, that does not surprise me, considering that the big thing, I think we even talked about it on the show, when Justin Bieber went to the Anne Frank Museum in the Netherlands. And then, there was that big stink when he signed the guest book, and then you had all of Justin Bieber's fans on, Twitter going, who's Anne Frank? So, the fact that people don't know who Paul McCartney is, I mean, it's infuriating, but am I shocked? not really.
God, what kind of... Oh, it's bad enough they don't know who Anne Frank is, which I suppose is a little easier to understand than Paul McCartney just because of the pop culture relevance between the two. I mean, it's not like Anne Frank wrote hit songs or anything, but God almighty, people are just... I'm... You know what? I'm going to be gone by the time this latest generation takes over, so I don't have to worry about it, but you guys are screwed. Simple as that.
No. You see, we're older than them, so we'll be able to hold things down.
You're like these dumbass kids.
Yeah. No. We're still... We still know what's up. It's all those people born after the Cold War ended that don't understand things.
Mike, you got a new phone.
I did!
Oh, yeah.
What phone did you get, Mike?
I got the iPhone 6.
You did not get the iPhone 6 Plus, correct?
No, because I don't need a tablet in my pocket.
You don't want to carry a TV set around with you everywhere you go?
I don't, no.
Okay.
You are not contributing to the end of human civilization.
Yay!
I didn't know that the iPhone 6 could do this. I was at a friend's holiday party. I hadn't actually interacted with an iPhone 6 Plus yet. Mm-hmm. I just knew that they were too big and I didn't need one. Mm-hmm. But he had it, and so I was like, why would you want something this big? Like, how do you even get around the entire screen? Like, you have to crawl your hands up and down the side of the phone. Like, you can't hold it normally.
Yeah.
Well, he then decided to show me a feature on the iPhone 6 that I've determined is the end of humanity's evolution. We're officially on the downside, and CNN might as well queue up the end of the world video they have. Because instead of using all the strenuousness that it would be to move your hands up and down the sides like I was suggesting, no. If you double tap the home button on the iPhone 6 Plus, the apps from the top of the screen will be pulled down to the bottom of the screen so your thumb can reach them.
You're kidding.
Good fucking God.
Humans are so lazy that we cannot simply move our hand an extra 2 inches up a phone. It has to be brought to us.
Again, not at all surprised.
You know what? We need to go back to the Middle Ages. Yeah. I'm just going to say it.
All the way back to the Middle Ages?
We need a societal collapse.
We need to start over.
We need a societal collapse. We need to go back to feudalism for a few hundred years, get back into shape so we can build ourselves back up again. And maybe the next generation, 5 generations down the line, will know what to do.
So kind of like
these kids know what a damn pencil is.
So we've got to kind of like do what we were talking about the Maple Leafs doing earlier. We just got to kind of just
blow it up
and start over again.
Fire our head
coach. The next
coach.
generation, we're not in good hands.
Fire our head coach.
Whoever our head coach is, fire him. Evaluate what we need to keep around, and then trade off our assets.
Right.
Yeah.
We have no assets to trade, though. That's the thing. That's the problem.
We're locked into long-term contracts with a lot of money. I don't know if we're going to make it, guys.
We have nothing to trade anyone.
Our draft picks have been increasingly worse.
Yeah.
Let's face it. This whole team has been cruising on the accomplishments of the Renaissance period for centuries now.
It's really just got to be blown up and started over. I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
We just got who can we swing a deal with to dump all of our high salaries?
I don't know.
Venus looks like it's always in trouble. We can try them. I mean, scientists just discovered like 8 planets, exoplanets, that live within livable zones of like these planets that are light years away.
Well, Jupiter's got a ton of moons. I bet we could they'd probably be willing to unload some of those moons, and we could maybe dump some of these big money contracts on Jupiter.
We'll trade you generation. What is this? What is the new one? Like, not millennials, whatever's right below millennials.
Yeah, what's after millennial? I don't know.
I don't know. Post-millennials.
Whatever they are.
We'll trade you the post-millennials.
The entire generation.
We'll trade you the post-millennials, Hawaii.
No, not Hawaii. I was going to say we'll throw in Idaho.
We do need no value. That's a salary dump.
What we need to do is we need to unload the post millennials, Justin Bieber, and the Situation and Snooki.
Right. We got to give them some value. We got to give them.
You're right. Hawaii. We need to get. Okay, it's going to be a shame to see Hawaii go, but it's worth it in the long run.
We got to give them Hawaii and. You want to? Do we need New Zealand? I mean, we filmed all the Hobbit movies now. We can
get
rid of it.
And we already have Australia.
Right, exactly.
It's the same thing. So we'll give them New Zealand. We'll give them New Zealand, Hawaii, and all the other things Mike mentioned. For Europa,
Ganymede.
Io, and a first-round pick.
I don't know. Do we want Ganymede or do we want Callisto? See, that's the question here. Either one's
and the
fine.
big red spot.
Yeah.
He's a cancer. He's a team cancer. Locker room cancer.
This is true. Nothing but trouble, that red spot. I was going to say, too, we could sweeten the deal. This is a little-known thing, but it's kind of like one of those diamond in the rough deals. Antarctica's kind of become like a minor hit with tourists. They like to go down there just to say they've been there. We'll throw Antarctica in, too, if we have to.
But I
willing
like
to do that.
penguins.
Yeah, that's true.
You can still get there are penguins in South Africa.
But they're not emperor penguins.
No, that's true. Yeah.
But what if we moved the penguins to the North Pole?
We could do that.
But does that diminish Antarctica's trade value? If they don't have
it absolutely does. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah,
it does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's put that out there and see what kind of. I mean, we can deal once we've got some groundwork set here, a framework of a trade. We can start wheeling the deal in.
We give them an initial offer, and then we'll do some back and forth, and then we'll agree on something.
Do we even really need Long Island if we already have New York City?
I mean, we gotta wait a year. It's an expiring contract. The Islanders are moving to Brooklyn. Once we get that settled in, then we can get rid of them.
Yeah, I'm not ready to part with the Islanders yet, so we got to wait for that. Then we can talk about that one next year.
Yeah,
that's a deal I'm willing to look at.
Island to be named later.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. I think we've got ourselves a deal here.
All right. Well, I'll get Jupiter on the horn, and we'll see what we do.
That may just be the greatest concept since the Glorious Tournament of Victory. I'm not sure.
We could work this into the Glorious Tournament. Can we do trades? Trades next year?
Yeah, let's do that.
The Chimp Conference needs to expand, so they're looking at the circus elephants. I don't know how they're going to fit in with their brand or their footprint, but...
Well, it's all about getting that GPA up, right? And those elephants remember.
That's true. Elephants are very smart, yeah. But so are the chimps. But you know what you'd have? I mean, you talk about a conference, man. You're talking, this is like Duke except better. They're going to be smart and they're going to be good.
Water skiing squirrel has been the Boise State of this tournament for a long time. They're very successful mid-major. They might be looking to move up.
Water skiing squirrel could use the money from the Chimp Conference too. There's no question about it. I'm thinking that's a deal we could make.
Does water skiing squirrel meet the academic standards of Chimp Conference?
That's okay because the elephants will pick up the grade point average enough to the squirrel we wouldn't have to worry about it.
I mean, they work for peanuts, so
right. Both of them actually. Yeah, you can do the peanuts with the elephants and the chimps too. All three for that matter. This is good stuff.
All
right. So anyway, let's go to Karate Chop Moses now that we've solved the world's problem with trade. From the ridiculous to the sublime, as they used to say.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I finally got around to seeing Exodus.
Exodus, Dawn of Justice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Starring Christian Bale as Batman, as Moses.
Oh, where's Ramses?
Where is he? He actually does say, "Let my people go" in the Batman voice, which made my day.
Of course he
does.
Let
my people go. Now, maybe I went in with the whole Batman as Moses thing already on my mind, but there were a few elements of the movie that kind of pushed it more in that direction. So, I think it's safe to say, I know you have, Zach. Greg, have you seen The Dark Knight, the one of Heath Ledger as the Joker?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, we are aware the plot point of that movie is that the Joker threatens to kill people every day in Gotham until Batman turns himself in. Well, in Exodus, Moses starts off as a general in the Egyptian army, then he gets exiled when they find out he's a Jew, and then he comes back at God's urging, and he starts a rebellion among the Jewish slaves against Egypt. And Ramses is like, I'm going to kill a Jewish family each day until Moses turns himself in.
Really?
Well, yeah. And I'm like, all we need now is Aaron Eckhart as like Harvey Dent to show up. There is even a scene where Moses is talking with Ramses in the Egyptian palace, and Ramses turns around, and then when he turns back, Moses is gone.
No way.
Yeah, that is a scene that happens.
No way.
That's a scene that happens, and there's another point where Moses is talking about vengeance, and I almost cracked up laughing in the movie theater. I was expecting him to be like, I am vengeance. I am the night.
Wow.
I am Moses.
So was it awful?
No, actually it wasn't.
Really?
It's been getting shit on by the reviews. Maybe I had really low expectations, but going in, like, it's not Best Picture or anything, but if you're looking for a decent action movie, like an epic action movie, it's fine. It does its job well.
But Mike, it's about Moses. It's not supposed to be an epic action movie.
That's the problem. That's where the problem is. There are a lot of liberties taken with the narrative. Like, in the Bible, it mentions that Moses, as a child, was raised by a member of the Egyptian royal family. Ridley Scott took that to mean Moses is now a general in the Egyptian army.
Yeah, I'd never heard that before.
No, that's not in the Bible.
What do the religious folk think about this? Are they losing their minds, or are they like, yeah, this is about right?
It seems mixed. I wouldn't call myself a Bible thumper by any stretch of the imagination, but I would consider myself faithful to a degree. And
well, I'm not talking about somebody that's intelligent and has faith. I'm talking, you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm talking about the group we're trying to trade here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, okay. Those people. The biggest uproar I've seen is about the way that they handled the plagues. They're presented, quote-unquote, naturally in that, like, for example, God doesn't just turn the Nile River into blood. He sends a swarm of crocodiles, which slaughter a bunch of livestock, which makes the water bloody. And then this forces the frogs who live on the bottom of the Nile to come out. That creates the frogs, and the frogs all die, and then maggots, and then flies. So that's the plague of flies.
So wait a minute, back up a second. So we're going to make Moses a general in the army, and that's okay. But we've got to come up with some sort of reasonable explanation for the plagues?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Oh, and it's actually kind of funny because God in this movie, they really did capture the Old Testament God, and that God's kind of a dick in this movie. The whole plague thing is explained by basically God being tired of Moses' failures. Like Moses,
tired of your shit.
Basically, Moses is living in exile. God shows up to him. He says, "You have to go back and free the Jews." So Moses is like, "Okay." So he goes back to Egypt to free the Jews. But Moses' original plan is, because they've established that he's a general in this movie, his plan is to wage a guerrilla war. And then that goes on for a while, but that's not really doing much. So God shows up again, and Moses is like, "Well, where have you been?" And God says, "I've been watching you fail. Now just sit back and watch." And then the plagues happen. So God is like, "Okay, enough of your shit. Okay, I'm tired of this. I'm going to do it right. Time to bring out the big guns."
And God in this movie is, of course, played by Morgan Freeman. And so Lucius Fox, as played by Morgan Freeman, is also God?
Unfortunately, no. God is portrayed by a small British child.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, again. So we make Moses a general. God's played by a British child, but we've got to get the plagues accurate. All right.
Yes.
All right. This makes...
But it's not a bad movie. I wouldn't go so far as to recommend it, but it's one of those movies, like, if you find yourself that you've got a day to kill, and you've got absolutely nothing else to do.
I'm watching it as soon as it shows up on Netflix. I have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But between Ramses' whole I'm gonna kill a Jewish family each day until Moses turns himself in, and Moses disappearing in the Egyptian palace, I'm like, oh my god.
Well, I was going to ask
2 boats.
when.
No, I was waiting at the end when the Red Sea closes and devours the Egyptian army. I was waiting for Aaron, Moses' brother, to be like, "The Pharaoh's dead. You can't cover that up." And then Moses would be like, "No, pin it on me. I can be those things." He's the hero the Jews deserved, but not the one they needed right now.
Right, exactly. I was going to ask, so when God came down to task Moses with this, did Moses go off to some place and train with Liam Neeson by chance before he went and got started about his business?
Yeah, and then he goes like, "You've never learned to mind your surroundings." Like,
well, speaking of ridiculous religious movies, did anybody check out that Revelation End of Days on the History Channel?
No, I didn't.
Oh, wow.
I saw the commercials for it.
It was,
Who ended up being the Antichrist?
I didn't get that far. I couldn't take it. I stopped watching about halfway through the first.
Alien.
You're able to create a 2-headed dog with 6 legs.
Halfway through the first episode, I just couldn't take another minute of it.
And then it just turns into an episode of Pawn Stars, I assume, at the end.
Something like that, yeah. I did.
Hitler.
Yes. The History Channel's greatest hits.
Greatest Hitlers?
Exodus was interesting.
It sounds like it.
It was interesting. There are actually parts of it I legitimately really, really liked for the cultural significance of it all, and then there were other parts where I'm like, oh my god, this is stupid. And then there were other parts where I'm like, yay, it's biblical Batman. Batman Moses did not disappoint.
All right.
It was even more Batman-y than I thought it would be going.
So basically, what we have found out with Exodus is that Batman is essentially an allegory for the story of Moses.
I mean, it's pretty clear once you break it down.
It could be the other way around. I don't know.
I'll tell you exactly why they made an action movie out of Noah and why they made an action movie out of Exodus. Because Hollywood is so starved for ideas that they're going to take anything they can, and the Bible is public domain. You don't have to pay anyone, for the rights to make a movie about Moses. So they're like, well, we need fodder for our action movie schlock. And Exodus is just there.
I look forward to the Book of Job.
That's going to be like Ant-Man, basically. It's not going to be that
serious comedy.
Yeah.
They're going to do the Avenger-style team-up with Noah, Moses, and Jesus.
Does Jesus already need a reboot? We just did Jesus.
This is true.
Jesus. Yeah, but now we need to make the new one to get him into that cinematic universe.
Now we're going to be in this weird place where Moses is also going to be Judas, and what do we do at that point?
Yeah. What do we call that? I mean, it could be like Age of something, but what are we going to call this group? We can't use Avengers. That's taken.
The Apostles.
But they're not really apostles, though.
Or Zach's going to like this, the Super Best Friends.
Captain Major.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to call it a night. Follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports. Go to the website, basicallyasportshow.com, Stitcher, iTunes, and Spreaker. With that, we'll see you next time.
Later.
Bye.
Please hang up and try again.